So that's Katie's problem there. She's not paid the fine yet. So we've heard stories like this from a few people now. So he said, well, we thought we'd, on your behalf, try and find out what on earth is going on. So we went to Savills. Now, they are the property managers for this car park, which is a UKPC car park. They told us we've been made aware of some issues with parking fines at the scheme over the last few weeks, and we are working with the landlord and UKPC Parking to rectify any fines issued in error. They say if anyone has received a fine in recent weeks that they believe to be incorrect, please contact UKPC Parking or the park directly. And they say the signage at the scheme is in the process of being updated as a priority to reflect our new timings for the parking to remain free until 10 o'clock. They say those signs should be changed by next Wednesday, but they do say, and this is the bonkers bit, until those signs are changed, you could still be fined if you park after 8, which is odd, isn't it? 08000 665 949. Maybe you've been in this situation, maybe you've been in this very car park, or maybe you've seen something similar somewhere else in Lincolnshire or further afield. Scott Dixon is known as the complaints resolver. He's with us live on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. So it does look in this instance, Scott, like they're going to, if you do get in contact with the company, they are going to say, okay, yeah, that's fine, we'll sort this out. But in general, how easy or hard is it to challenge a parking fine?
It's generally, it's easy enough if you know what you're doing. And this is the problem, the first thing to remember, Scott, is that it's not a fine. And only local authorities can issue fines for infringements on public highways. Private parking operators can only issue invoices for an alleged breach of contract for parking on private land. And the signage in this case is inadequate to form a contract for consumers to make an informed decision, and it does not meet the Consumer Rights Act 2015.
Interesting.
The Consumer Rights Act 2015.
So what is the difference between, so obviously you're saying the councils can fine you in their car, but when we're talking about a private car park, you could still, you could still get hauled, before someone to pay that if you keep ignoring it. You can't just ignore it, can you?
You can't ignore it. Council parking tickets are called penalty charge notices, and they are fines. Private parking tickets are called parking charge notices, and they're just invoices. So they look similar. You can't ignore them, and there is an appeals process. So always appeal in the first instance. Don't pay a ticket that's slapped on your windscreen. Don't respond to that, because they don't know who the owner of the vehicle is. They've got to go to the DVLA to get the keeper details. So if you find a ticket on your windscreen, don't respond. Don't act on instinct. Wait until something comes through by post, and then follow the appeals process. And if your appeal is rejected on the first instance with UKPC, in this case, you've got a second stage appeal with Poplar, which is an independent appeals body, and 40% of appeals are always are won at that stage. So
interesting. So if you can be bothered with the process, because I think what happens is because they also do this thing, the parking companies, where they say if you pay it by such and such a date, it'll be cheaper. If you don't pay it by then, it'll go up and up and up. So people just panic and go, right, I can't be bothered with this, I'm just going to pay it. But you can go through that appeals process and not worry about that, can you?
Yeah, and always look at the signs. And in this case, the signage is inadequate and it's not legally compliant. And that has been affirmed by UKPC and Savills, who've said that any fine, any invoices, parking tickets, whatever you call them, they're just going to be waived.
Yeah.
So you just that tells you that the signage is.
Yeah, well, they've admitted the signage is wrong and they're going to change it. And the bizarre thing is they're saying I presume it's automated, so you might get fined in the meantime and have to charge it, which is probably why they're saying that. But so in general, your advice would be don't be put off by the process. Go through the different hoops that you have to go through. And that's a big number. 40% of fines are overturned, or whatever you want to call them, are overturned.
That's right, and it's always the signage on most instances, because it's I mean, I've got the sign in front of me on my screen here,
Yeah.
and it's just so, and it's very small. That
I mean, I think that is the other problem.
the
People just read the big block capital bits of the signage. No, I've never seen anyone read, because there's loads of rigmarole on those signs sometimes, isn't there? No one reads it all, do they?
They don't, and it's deliberately made confusing. And when it's a free car park, people aren't going to go to the trouble of reading all of those little symbols and signs and small wording, and it's unfair. But I've got a load of templates on my website where people can just download that covers various different scenarios, and I've got a blog on my website which explains the process as well. So you can look it up on my website, thecomplainsresolver.co.uk, and it simplifies the process.
Good to talk to you. That's an interesting statistic that 40% of those appeals are successful. So if you can be, I think some people just can't be bothered. And I have challenged a couple of parking fines or charges or whatever you want to call them legally before, and they've been overturned. So it is worth sticking to your guns. Good advice there from Scott, who is known as the Complaints Resolver.
The sound of Lincolnshire. Scott Dalton, BBC.